There's this Japanese proverb that says, fall 7 times, stand up 8. I kind of like have this inner grit where I realize that you may not be kind of successful right away. You may have some failures along the way, but you just got to kind of pick yourself up and try again.
Hello, my lovely listeners. It's Deepa, and today's guest, Suresh Bhat, is a Chief Financial Officer at the Hewlett Foundation, responsible for financial management and planning, including financial risk management. Prior to joining the foundation, he served as the Chief Financial Officer of the Haas School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley, where he was a key member of the Haas senior management team and thought partner to the Dean and Advisory Board. He earned both an MBA and a bachelor's degree from Haas School of Business at University of California, Berkeley. The reason why I love talking to Suresh is that he speaks from the heart, shares personal and professional experiences in the most authentic way, and I come away from these chats feeling inspired. One of the key takeaways from our conversation, and there are many, is to listen to your gut instinct, process it, have a plan, and take thoughtful action. When you know something is not working, then commit to making a change. I hope you all enjoy our conversation as much as I did. Here's Suresh Bhat. I am so excited. We are here, we're chatting. I'm so excited to know more about your journey that I don't know about. So let's just dive into it. Do you love movies more than you love tennis, or do you like them equally?
That's a great question. I would say I love them both equally, and I'll throw in books and wine in as other passions that I equally love.
Wait a minute, how do you manage to do all of these things equally with a full-time job?
Little sleep? No, I don't know. Managed to get it all in.
Okay, so what's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie of all time or favorite movie recently?
Let's do recently.
Sure. I would probably say, you may have seen this already. It's called The Holdovers.
I haven't.
It's kind of a trauma that two men have faced. One's a teacher, one's a student. The script writing and acting it's really powerful and poignant. Paul Giamatti is the professor. I don't know if you've ever seen, he was famous in Sideways and a bunch of other movies. And there's also kind of a young actor. I think it's his first movie, but it's up for best film for the Oscars. They just put out their nominations, and also Paul Giamatti's up for best actor. If you've ever seen Dead Poet Society, it's kind of in that genre of film, but really good.
What was one main thing that was really, you were wow, just blown away by it? Or was there one in the entire movie? Like a scene or something? Well,
there's a moment in the movie where the youth is kind of exposed. He's done something wrong. Paul Giamatti in his younger life, would have maybe kind of thrown the youth under the bus, but instead he threw himself in the bus to save the kid from a potentially traumatic situation. It's a really, really touching scene.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm sold. I'm going to watch it.
You should absolutely watch The Holdovers.
It's on my list then. I just wrote it down. Listen, you owe me a couple of Hindi songs, by the way. I gave you a bunch of them. This was last year or something, I think. And then I haven't heard one Hindi song back in return. What's up with that?
Well, I'll give you some of my old favorites versus anything current. How does that sound?
Sure, I'll take it.
Kya Hua Tera Vada from Hum Kisi Kab Nahi.
Okay.
I don't know if you like that song or.
Of course, I've heard of it.
Yeah, and then one of my favorite kind of poppy songs. Again, this is really old. I'm dating myself, but Aap Jisse Koi Mere Zindagi Mein Aaya from that movie Qurbani.
Oh my God. Have you seen the latest version of it that came out last year?
I have not. You should send it to me.
Okay. So it's actually from Ayushmann Khurrana's movie last year. I think it was called Hero, but don't quote me on it. I'll send it to you. But they've just done one of the best remixes of that song.
Oh, cool. That song was the vibe in that song.
It's iconic. Yeah.
And then Zehe Naseeb.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, of course.
Those are kind of some of my sentimental kind of favorites.
Well, not bad for an ABCD, Suresh. Not just kidding.
Thank you.
You can actually also pronounce them. I'm very impressed already with your Hindi. All right, so tell our audience a little bit about yourself and who you are and what you do and all of that fun stuff.
Sure. So I'm the first person in my family that was born in this country. I think as all Indian parents who emigrate here, they want their kids to be like the doctors, the engineers. I actually wanted to major in journalism. My father wouldn't support that. He basically said if I did that, he wouldn't support me going to university. So in the end, we compromised and I went undeclared. And then I ended up being a business major. And sort of the rest is history. So I would say I've kind of spent my entire career working primarily in finance roles across a large number of companies: Deloitte & Touche, Bank of America, Charles Schwab, BlackRock, the University of Berkeley, the Haas School of Business, and most recently, the Hewlett Foundation. So my current role, I'm the CFO of the Hewlett Foundation. We're a $13 billion endowment. So pretty nice. We gave out over $600 million in 2023 to really neat causes: environment and climate change, performing arts, U.S. democracy, education, women's reproductive health. It's a really fun, impactful role because you get to see the impact of your work sometimes immediately and sometimes over the long arc of time. So that's a quick thumbnail sketch.
That's a great quick thumbnail. I'm curious, when you were in college and you went undeclared, and how did you get into like figuring out that business major was where you wanted to go? Or was that also around, like, is that something that your dad wanted you to do? Or is that something that you really were keenly found yourself passionate about in college?
Yeah, it's a great question. I took this Economics 1 course by Laura Tyson, who actually, she's like really famous. I think she was on Bill Clinton's Council of Economic Advisors, and she was like the dean of the London Business School. But that kind of sparked my interest broadly in kind of that world. When I was a junior in college, I kind of got into trading a little bit, like stocks and options and that kind of stuff. I didn't do very well, but I kind of liked it. And then I used to start reading like again, my passion for journalism. So on Sundays, I would actually buy like 4 papers. I'd buy the New York Times, the LA Times, Chicago Tribune, the local paper. And I would kind of go through like 4 of these papers, but I always really read a lot of the business journalism and just read a lot about like companies and investing. So I was didn't know what I wanted to do though. And like accounting was one of like these, people said it was a pretty easy job to get right out of college. In a perfect world, I would have gone straight into more like finance versus accounting. But that's I would say Econ 1 is really what put me on the roadmap to business.
And what was the spark that happened in Laura's class? Like what was it? Was it about her teaching? The reason I ask is that, there's a lot of young kids that we have teenagers that face through the same thing. So I'm just kind of curious as to see, what was the spark?
I don't know. She was just, she was funny. She was really smart. She would always come in to the classroom like super like hyper caffeinated. She would say, I just had like 4 cups of coffee. And she was kind of like, I don't know, she was quirky, but brilliant. And then I think just the subject itself really resonated with me. I was excited about that whole world. I'd never really taken any business classes. Like my first year, I was taking like sociology, English, calculus, all these kind of generic liberal arts classes that you do when you're an undeclared liberal arts major. I think my second semester, I took that Econ 1 class and I was like, wow, this stuff's like really cool. So it just percolated my interest there.
So did you kind of choose that class or was it just sort of random?
I chose the class. I think it was like one of those core requirements or opt you could take, and I just happened to get her. So again, it's lucky, right? I didn't seek this professor. I just happened to get her. That definitely changed it. In fact, when I was CFO at the Haas School of Business, she's like a really big wig, and I met her, and I actually got a chance to tell her like, hey, like taking your class kind of changed the trajectory of my life and kind of what I decided to do in a really positive way.
That's incredible. What I'm hearing you actually say is, I think, and this is true probably in all aspects of education, is that when you talked about sparking interest, like how she brought that topic to the students' attention, I think really mattered in creating that level of curiosity and interest about the topic.
Yeah, she brought it to
right?
life. And it was, she not only taught you the theory, but she would give you like tangible real life example of how economics work. So it wasn't just like, let me draw you like the supply demand curve. And I mean, of course, that's in the textbook and you have to do the math, but it was more
Right,
just kind of
right.
telling stories about things that were happening in the real world on a geopolitical basis and bring it to life so you could take the theory and relate it to real life.
And in an ideal world, that's what you'd hope for every teacher to be able to have that kind of level of curiosity that they can bring to a student. Whether that student like eventually does what they want to do with it is a whole separate issue. But in that moment, at least they're just so curious and they're like, oh my God, I want to learn more about this thing.
For sure. Yeah.
So, and then throughout your journey over the next 15, 20 years, prior to being CFO of Hewlett Foundation, you were the CFO of Haas Business School.
Yep.
How did you make that pretty big shift from Haas to Hewlett, from to a foundation, which is nonprofit?
I'm going to flip that question a little bit and tell you actually more of a story of how I made that switch from for-profit to nonprofit, because the switch from Haas to Hewlett was less gradual. So I was in my early 40s, having a phenomenal career at BlackRock, which is the world's largest asset manager. It's got over 10 trillion assets. It's an awesome company, just doing great, managing tons of people in like 10 different countries. But what I realized is that that was coming at a toll because I was working probably 80 plus hours a week. And, even like I worked 40 hours a week on vacations. I remember it really well. It was Thanksgiving of 2013. And I was home and I was like, we were at dinner one night. It was Thanksgiving. Kieran, my son, who you know, he's at the dinner table and he's like, Daddy, it's like when you're on the phone, it's like I don't even exist. So it was a pretty existential moment in my life where like my own son basically felt like I just was ignoring him. And obviously it doesn't make you as a father feel really good. But at that time, I had a really chance to reflect the rest of that weekend. And then I went to my wife, she said, you know what? I think I'm done like with corporate America. I'm going to try to find a CFO job in a mission-driven nonprofit organization. Because I think I love my craft of finance, but how can I do this in a much more do something different, have much more work-life balance and flexibility. It's really hard to get a job in nonprofit, especially at the C-suite level, because people are suspicious. They're like, hey, like you've never worked in nonprofit your whole career, you've only corporate America. Like, how do we know you? That's really where your heart is. And also is going to be like taking an 80% pay cut. So they're really suspicious. Like, why would you do this? Like, you're just going to wait till the next things come around and go bounce and take the next job. I had a chance to go work at a lot of institutions. So I kind of did a lot of networking, met with a lot of people, and it was really hard. And in the end, how I got the job at Haas was really by in the connection. So most of my jobs have been very lucky. I've been recruited by executive recruiters. So for this job, I just happened to see an ad because I get this weekly email because I'm a Berkeley alumni of jobs, both external Haas. It was like CFO of Haas. So I literally cold called the recruiter and I convinced him at least to get like a formal phone screen. And then I got myself on the interview list. And what was great about that was I knew the dean of the business school because A, he had taught me a class and actually still remembered me, international finance. And B, I had him be on a mutual fund board at BGI. I helped him get this really cool board seat. And then what I found out at the very end, and of course I'm a double alum from there, so it's helped. What I found out at the how really helped, what nailed in the coffin for me to get the job, was the chair of the Haas board was one of the top 3 partners at Deloitte & Touche. And this is the guy that I actually worked for my first job out of college. So it's crazy how all these connections come to life. So anyway, long and short, it was my journey from kind of for-profit to nonprofit was an interesting one. A lot of people, probably 9 out of 10 people at BlackRock said, you're an idiot for leaving. Like, go do this when you're like in your mid 50s. I'm like, just be happy for me that I'm choosing something different. So, and since that point, I've sort of never looked back.
Wow. So let me see if I get this straight. So you were just sitting at a dinner table and Kiran was like, Dad, like, you're not paying, like you're on your phone all the time or whatever he said, that really sort of like struck you pretty intensely, that to say, oh my God, this is how I don't want to be like this as a father, and this is how he's seeing me, and there's validity in what he's feeling. So you spent the weekend in like proper self-introspection mode. Did I get that right?
Absolutely, yes.
And then you went to work on Monday, and did you just quit, or you said, I'm giving my notice?
I'm pretty practical, so I didn't want to quit until I had another job lined up. But I really made it almost like a second full-time job to, whenever I had free time, and taking vacation time to, like, meet with other institutions that were nonprofit to actively, kind of get my name out there. But like I said, it was difficult. I didn't start at Berkeley till I think like maybe the next fall of the year. So it took me, 8-9 months to be successful in getting to what I wanted to do.
So wait a minute. So that whole weekend, what were some of the questions that you were asking yourself, or did you talk to friends? Like, what did you do? Like, clearly that was like you were taken aback by what Kiran said, but what was your process?
Well, I mean, to tell you, okay, my process is first that, okay, I'll tell you another story. So when Anjali was 18 months, my eldest child, I used to work in mergers and acquisitions. And again, unfortunately, different company, it's like investment banking, you're on the road a lot. So once when I was in LA, Suzanne called me up. She said, you know what Anjali just said? This is true story, 18 months. She's like, can I borrow a daddy to give me a kiss and hug at night? This is like my second time it's happening, like 10 years later with my second kid. So first you go through just immense guilt and you think to yourself, I honestly was a good father. I really was. But,
and you still are.
A lot of guilt goes through your mind. Like, oh, and my dad was a workaholic. He never interacted with me. So I always vowed I would never be like my dad. And of course I'm turning into my dad, being a workaholic. So, it was just a lot of, you kind of go through that phase of just like immense guilt. You just feel really bad. I mean, I felt really, really, really bad that night and the next day. For me, I probably did some like run or something. I do like my best thinking when I'm walking or running, and I try to put together a plan. So I literally went from sort of like guilt and sadness to like, okay, I am committed to making a plan to get the next thing that I want to do. And it wasn't like this long drawn out process. By the end of the weekend, I went to Suzanne when it was Saturday, and I said, this is what I'm going to do. We're like, do you support me? She was like, yeah, absolutely. She's like, even if you make a little less money and we need to change our, lifestyle of how we live. Like, yeah, she's like, that would be great. Out of that came was, her unhappiness of me not spending a lot of, time with her either. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it was a family theme. You almost were like you said, you don't do these long drawn out things. You knew something didn't sit right. You knew this is who you don't want to be as a father, as a parent. And then you said, I'm just going to have a plan of action. I'm just going to get on it because there's no time like the present.
That's right.
And if you want to make a change, then if I know something's unhappy, why am I not going to make a change? It was that simple for you.
Yeah, in this case, because I think, whenever I'd had conversations in between that time frame of Anjali and Karen, you have these things and you just kind of get back on that treadmill because that life is also pretty sexy. You're making a ton of money. I kept getting promoted. It's also that high of being really successful in that corporate world. While it is a grind, it's also really exciting and seductive at the same time.
So during this thinking time, what was like, how did you shift? How did you know nonprofit is where you wanted to land?
That's a good question. I think even from high school, from undergrad, my whole life, I've always been actively involved, both as a line volunteer and as a board member. I was actually like even chairing nonprofit boards in my 20s. I had always wanted to do something in that arena. And wow, like I could marry my craft of finance in a mission-driven environment. I just took me longer to kind of get there than I thought it would. Again, I just kind of got seduced. I don't want to say by the dark side because it was fun and it allowed me to live the life that I do. But no, I've always been really, really involved in kind of volunteers and I think going to Berkeley too. I mean, I know it's a little bit trite and cliche, but I think that people go to Berkeley, they are these kind of people that really want to kind of change the world and have an impact in some shape, form, or way, however they want to define it for yourself.
So throughout your life, that was definitely one of your values, but you just never thought of doing it as a full-time job. But then
Correct.
when you had this moment, you're like, this completely makes sense. It resonates with my values, with who I am. And it's a great shift. It'll allow me to do the work that I enjoy doing and also allow me to spend time with my family.
You nailed it.
Excellent, Suresh. And like really listening to yourself and not sitting on it for years together, like I know a lot of people do, and actually doing something about it right away because you're like, there's no time like the present.
Yeah,
Right.
I honestly think if I hadn't done something and made that honest decision, I would have really slipped into that just back to what I was doing. It was a very pivotal decision at that time because it would have been just so easy to just okay, fine. I still remember that. It was a very seminal moment for me personally.
And this is true for many people. Many people in the workforce, especially at a very high level, that they're so driven and doing good work according to how they are feeling about themselves, come to these moments, and a lot of times, at least I want to say, 6 out of 10 people will just be like, oh my God, this is sad. I'm feeling super guilty about it. And maybe I'll try and spend more time with my kid this week or next week. And then it just kind of fizzles out. And then they go back to their old behaviors.
And that was me changes. At the past. I'd be the first person to say that was absolutely me between, kind of Anjali the first time and now, Karen the second time. So yeah.
Yeah. And then you're like, wait a minute. Then 10 years have gone and your kids are grown and you're like, you've never had that moment. But you said, I can't have this happen another time.
Well, yeah, especially because especially my oldest daughter is my mini-me and I was really close to her. The relationship with my father is cordial, but not close. I'm very close to my mother. And the thought of my son feeling the way about me that I feel about my own father, that was oh my God, this is my whole life. I didn't want this to happen. And now I have this window of opportunity, which it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life because now Anjali, my daughter, is close to her mother and Karen and I are we're like that. We're Karen and I are so close. But if I hadn't made that decision, who knows what would have happened.
Yeah. Well, kudos to you for really listening to your child, really listening to yourself and making the change right then and there.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'm going to change our conversation slightly a little bit. So you've been in really incredible leadership roles for many years. Can you provide an example of a leadership challenge you faced and some of the specific strategies that you employed to overcome it?
Yeah, I'll kind of tell you a couple stories. So, and I would say viewing feedback as a gift, it was probably the biggest thing that's allowed me to be successful as a leader. So what do I mean by that? In my late, probably 20s, I was very lucky, or by mid to late 20s, I joined Schwab as a junior manager of finance. And in 3 years, I got 3 promotions and made VP at a pretty young age and got all this equity and stuff. And, I thought I was kind of a badass. I was, I would say more than self-confident. Let's call it borderline arrogance, and didn't have a lot of humility. When I got feedback, whether it be from peers or from I just I blew it off. I didn't take it seriously. So I actually had a meeting with the head of HR at Schwab, this woman named Jan Hyre King. And she said, Suresh, you've had this amazing career. And, a lot of times during these meetings, you are the smartest guy in the room, but you make everybody, you shut out other people's input and you're not really building a consensus. And she's like, you're at this pivotal moment of your career where if you don't change, then you've probably maxed out in your career. So I was like, wow, holy smokes. And again, I was honestly kind of clueless about that. And again, it's probably because I just was blowing off stuff that I was hearing because I had done so well. When I got this feedback, I was like, yeah, whatever, it doesn't matter. I've been doing great. I don't need to do that. And she did this in such this nice, gentle way. It wasn't like she was dressing me down or she just wow, you're doing great, but I want to kind of tell you, you have these blinders on, you don't even see that, you're at this point where you just won't go any farther because of your style. So that was a really thing. So fast forward when I got to Berkeley Haas, which was my first nonprofit job. I moved into a situation that was kind of a turnaround. The Haas Business School was like top 10 B schools, losing money. They never really had a finance people. The dean hired me because like we were viewed as not really good in the team. So I made the mistake of trying to like, do this work hard, like corporate American mentality. And then my number two person came to me and said, "Hey, Suresh, like the whole team, you're burning them out." And she's like, "You got to like take a totally different approach." And so by then, at this point in time, I was really listening to feedback. So I was like, wow, this is amazing. Like my number two person is giving me all this great feedback. So I did exactly everything she told me to do, totally changed the situation around, was be able to build the team back, slow things down, practice really active listening, and was able to do that. So I just realized that once you get constructive feedback and you truly do that, so much to the point where every year when I get feedback, I always ask them, be like, what are 3 things I could work on? And you always have to give me 3. I put a Post-it on my screen, and every day when I walk in the morning, it just has that intentional, like, okay, these are things that I want to consciously work at. I would say constructive feedback has been the most important thing for me to be a better leader.
So wait, borderline arrogance to humility. That's what I'm hearing. But I'm curious. So from that first feedback that you got from the HR person to the feedback from your number 2 from Haas Business School, what shifted and changed for you?
There's 2 answers, right? And they're both true. So I'm just going to be very vulnerable. I mean, one of the reasons why I was motivated to really embrace that feedback was because I wanted to continue to be very successful in my career. If you're an Olympic athlete and you're at a silver medalist and somebody's going to give you advice that can get you over the hump and be a gold medalist, you'd be stupid not to listen. Part of the reason was selfish in terms of like, oh shit, like I didn't realize this and I need to do this not because it's the right thing to do, because it's going to just help me be more successful in life. But then over time, right, you really appreciate that, just to become I would call it not just be more successful, just to be a better human being. There's a reason why people are giving you constructive feedback. And I mean, they want you to be better. They're not trying to be jerks. And it was just a mindset change from being defensive. When I used to get feedback, I used to be defensive, and I would try to come up with examples to defend why what they were telling me was not accurate, to just taking that feedback, listening to it, processing it, and actually realizing that their feedback is right. I mean, every year I get older, I was like, wow, like this is a really good kernel of feedback that I just got. And if I actually do something about it, it's like, this is a good thing. So those are the 2 things.
So, and I think part of it is, and I don't know if this is true in your experiences with other people, when you see people getting defensive, I see a lot of them get defensive because they're like, I'm successful in what I'm doing. So where am I doing wrong? And how can you say I need to do something differently, right?
That was me in my mid-20s, mid to late 20s. That was me. Yeah.
Yeah, because then you're just like, wow, I'm successful. So what else should I be doing? Because success is rated by, getting a higher position or managing more people, like whatever it may be.
That's right. Yeah.
But success all the time doesn't really mean that you're really good at everything that you're doing in your job, or the people that are working for you like really appreciate you or like you, or that you're actually changing or performing the way that you and your team are supposed to perform for your business goals and business imperative, right? And I think the word that you used was that shift in the mindset, because initially, even though it was like for partly selfish reasons, because if I do better, then I'll get better. But eventually that feedback that you were implementing felt so right for you that you said, why not?
It's to the point now. I get frustrated if my boss, my boss recently, like, oh, I don't really have anything for you. I'm like, no, like that. I'm like, I won't accept that. Like, you have to just be honest with me. Like, I know there's things that I could be doing better. Like, I won't let like my manager or even my peers off the hook. Like if they say, oh, everything's great, I'd be like, no, I'm calling BS on that. I know there's things I could be doing a better job on. just be real with me.
So when you did that the last time, what was the feedback that you got after you said that to your manager? You don't have to share if you don't want to, but I'm just curious.
I would say the last bit of feedback that I got was appreciate the details and nuances of what other people do versus kind of assuming that they're, not as complex as like what you might do. So don't assume that, like, if I see something, I'm like, wow, like, why is it taking so long for them to do this or whatever like that? Like have no judgment because you don't walk in their shoes. So, just have that appreciation for that. And it wasn't like a big deal. It was kind of like a nuanced comment, but it struck me as, that's really true. Whether it's the marketing team or, the certain technical grants operations team, like, I don't walk in their shoes. I don't know their day-to-day stuff. Like, so why should I make assumptions that may be less than accurate?
Right. That's great nuanced feedback, by the way. So circling back to my original question of, challenge in leadership, you're saying you said feedback is a gift. Take feedback as a gift.
Yes.
And in any situation that you find yourself in, if you're able to get good feedback, constructive feedback, and if you're able to take it, or if you're able to understand where the feedback is coming from, then eventually that'll help you like overcome any sort of leadership challenge that you might have.
I think so.
Or improve at least.
I think so. If you ask questions, like, which is part of, right, that, being a leader is finding out the right questions to ask to the right people at the right time versus kind of assuming.
Yeah.
But again, that's part of the feedback that I got. So I learned, rather than coming up with something like first out of the gate, like you don't have to be the first person to speak or the first person to have the answer. It's be asking somebody, hey, what do you think? What's your perspective? Even though I feel like I have the perspective or answer, rather than kind of just, giving that, asking somebody else first.
Yeah. And the other point that comes to my mind for me as you're talking about this is that many people at your level, it's really hard for them to take feedback. I don't know if that's something that you've observed on your own, like at C-suite, VP or GM levels, and they're so high up there and they feel like they have to have the answers for everything. And probably there's a bit of isolation there. A lot of them, it's really hard to take feedback, but wow, like what a shift they can make if they're able to see it as a gift and then apply it, and then huge transformation.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to switch once more. Over the years, I've probably reached out to you when I've really wanting to bounce off an idea, or I'm thinking of starting something new. And in some sense, I've viewed you as my mentor, and you're really good at it, like from my perspective. Can you tell a little bit about, is this something that you actively do, being a mentor for others, or have there been mentors in your own life that have helped your leadership journey, and how important it is to leverage mentorship as a leader?
I think it's huge. I'm so glad you asked this question because there's been so many mentors in my life who helped me be successful. When I was also pretty young, I was working at a company where I was really frustrated because there was a peer of mine who was, getting promoted faster, just better. And I went and talked to my manager. Part of it was because this guy was attached to this leader. This was a very political situation that was like rising up really fast. And because he was this person's finance guy, my peer was getting promoted. So I went and talked to our kind of VP of our division. So what's up with this guy? Like, I'm there, and he's like, hey, Suresh. He's like, you know what? He's like, this guy's probably not that good, but it's like politics. He's like, what you need to do is just kind of, work hard. This is a meritocracy. Like, things will even out. And sure enough, once this superstar actually got laid off, then the finance guy that was his support guy, like nobody wanted him. He was kind of like out of a job. So this guy like rose really fast and flamed out. And I was like, wow, that really, really struck with me. Another mentor of mine, I've had a lot of both men and women mentors. So Suzanne Lyons, when I got a job at the first company, she was like the top C-suite. I'm just my first job at Schwab, actually. I'll never forget how how comfortable she made me is nervous the last interview. She joking like, you must be doing pretty good if you got here to talk to me. Just was a great person. And I always kept in touch with her. And when I was looking to leave Schwab, she was the chief marketing officer for Visa. She chaired the U.S. Olympic Committee board. She's like this amazing woman. She helped me get a job offer at Visa. I got a job offer at Washington Mutual. I got a job at Berkeley School of Investors. So I called her up and said, hey, Suzanne, like, what should I do? What job? And she told me I shouldn't take the job at Visa, which she helped me get, by the way. I should go work for Berkeley's Global Investors. And here's why she thought it was good. Took her advice, like the best job that led to like all my career sex. So it was so amazing. She looked out for me. Okay. So fast forward, now I'm at BlackRock. I'm in this amazing job. I have this guy that's working for me. I quickly realized that this guy working for me is like, honestly, like the smartest guy I've ever had work for me. This guy is like way better than me. I should be working for him. So kind of like 6 months of this job, I just said, Tom, like I had like 30 people. Like I said, honestly, like you are like the most talented guy. I should be working for you. So like, what should we do to like set you up for success? And like we got him out of a job. Next thing you know, he's running investor relations. It was crazy at this company is like, because I was associated with this guy under me, his halo, like my reputation enhanced because like he was saying all these great things about me as a boss I didn't even know behind the scenes. And now he's the CFO of a Fortune 500 company making a gazillion dollars than me. But what Suzanne taught me was, how do you make a decision for somebody else that's under you that's the best for them versus best for you? Like, and since it was also a pivotal moment, like you always try to hire people that are like better than you versus like being the smartest person. Another mentor of mine is this guy named Rohit Bhagat, and he was at BGI. And what's cool about him was he was like an Indian person being the number 2 of this firm. So like when you go to a firm and you kind of see somebody, right, your own skin, your own color, you're like, wow, like you could see yourself up there, right? You can envision like, wow, you know, in a lot of these companies, right, it's white men. So, and he was so strategic and global and polished. And even though there was a layer between me and him, I reported to the CFO, then reported to him. Like he would always come by my cube and, you know, take time to spend time with me and, you know, let me, you know, kind of pick his brain. So that was another one. Then the final mentor I'd mentioned about like how you need people to save you. So when we sold our company to BlackRock, which was like really good for a lot of people, the CFO of BlackRock was a woman named Anne-Marie Peacock, and I was working for her. And for whatever reason, I did something to make this one old executive mad. I still don't know what I did to this day to like get him upset. But it turns out like this guy he was like this super powerful person trying to basically get me fired. So the CFO basically stuck up for me and said like, this guy's awesome. She basically went head to head with him and kind of saved me from a very difficult situation. And she kind of like championed me. And I, you know, I always worked really hard, did right by. I met her when we were selling our company to BlackRock. And so I got to keep my job and all that. And then after that, she was always like a kind of an executive sponsor for me. So I feel that I've been really, really lucky to have a lot of great mentors and sponsors. I have tried to, you know, certainly pay it back as well as I can. I think the biggest thing that I've tried to do, and I wouldn't call this mentorship per se, but I know a lot of people. So I've been very successful at helping people get jobs in a lot of different, you know, spaces. Yeah. Kind of championing for them, especially the people that I feel really good about. Like I'm going to strongly go to bat for them. So if they're trying to get a job at a company where I know people, I'll be like, this is the reason why you should. In fact, one of my people at my own company, the Hewlett Foundation, he had capped out. There was this job where he's going to get a 50% promotion, or sister foundation, Packard. They were all the way done, and they were at a decision. But I called the CFO. I said, look, there's this guy that works for me. Honestly, like he will blow you guys away. And like, they got him in the last minute. He blew them away. He works there and he got a big promotion, you know, makes way more. Great for him and his family. But it was able to, you know, navigate him from our company to a different one. Cause I'm like, he's maxed out here. We got to like, you know, I mean, he was a really smart guy. Let him, you know, it would be a bad decision for me to hoard on to good talent when he'd already mastered everything. And he could go on to the next thing.
Right. And there was no other space in your own company for him to do that. I mean, I think
Correct.
based on all the amazing mentors that you've had, one of the things that you consistently said about all of them is that they looked out for me. They had my best interest at heart. And including, and representation matters and some of these things, seeing somebody that looks like you, that is up there and is able to like mentor you. But what do you think are like some of the consistent qualities of being a mentor that you've noticed among all these people and being you yourself being a mentor?
Yeah. First, they care about you as a person and as a human being more than just your performance and your work role. Like, they truly care about you. They want to know how you're doing within your family, kind of what's going on. Like, are you happy, or do you have any, challenges? They take the time to actively listen. And these are super like busy people. I remember talking to Rodolfo Sainz, this Mexican executive that first I told you. I think he had like a really busy day, and I was supposed to be with him for like 15 minutes, and he spent an hour with me. He just like, I'm like, oh, I know our time's like, no, this is important, Suresh. I want to talk to you because I could tell it's really bothering you. It's so, for somebody that's super high up to spend that much time with a junior person that they don't have to spend. I mean, my mentor just happened to be like multiple like layers usually above my role.
Right.
So I found that to take the time, they would actively listen, they would care about you as a human being, and they would kind of reflect about like what you said, and then give you advice that would benefit you versus what benefits them. That's, they took their own personal ambition or like what's best for them out of the equation. They truly wanted to do what was best for me.
Yeah. Wow. So care about you, actively listen, take the time, think about what you said, and advise you to the best of what can happen for you as opposed to what will work for them. So what benefits you as opposed to what would benefit them or the company that you're in.
Yeah.
Really, really, yes, absolutely. And you know what, now that you're saying that, one of the things that comes up for me constantly is in the coaching space is that if I'm coaching someone and they have a mentor, it's just like incredibly even more powerful because they get such good feedback and we are able to bounce back and forth and they're able to say, oh my God, this is what my mentor said. And then coaching can enhance whatever it is that they're getting advice through their mentors.
Agreed.
So, I mean, these are like, I think if I kind of think about all the people that I've coached, it's been even more impactful when they've had somebody like really support them, like the way that you just kind of talked about.
Yeah, I agree. I think, they had my back.
Yeah.
I think people that have your back, like if you make a mistake, they're not gonna throw you under the bus. Rather, they'll take accountability for some situation and try to rectify it on behalf of you, even if it's not their problem to do.
Yeah, because like you said, it goes back to they really care about you. Like,
yeah,
it's just not a transaction for them. It's a very, unique relationship, and they personally and professionally care about how you do in your life. Excellent. So that's one of the key things that I think my viewers should know about when they're looking for a mentor. Does this person really take the time and spend the time with me and care about me? Excellent. Well, Suresh, how do you handle setbacks and failures? What strategies do you use to like bounce back and maintain like sort of like a positive mindset?
That's a great question. Some of it's inherent. I would say like there's this Japanese proverb that says, fall 7 times, stand up 8. My kids always laugh when I tell them that. And then Kieran texted me like a couple months ago. He's like, oh my God, Dad, my professor said this Japanese proverb that you always say. He was losing his mind. It was pretty funny. I would also say, which is going to sound totally God, I hate saying these phrases because they sound so trite and cliche, but I really do believe it. You have to really inherently like yourself. And I find that a lot of people don't like themselves. So if you kind of like yourself, whatever, love yourself, then you're going to kind of have that appreciation or grace that like you're not going to be able to have instant success at everything. So I've always before it became popular, I read Angela Duckworth's, kind of grit and she has that like brilliant formula, right? Where effort counts twice, or like skill times effort equals talent, and achievement equals sort of that effort, times skill. So I'm definitely a person, for me, that I think that I kind of like have this inner grit where I realize that you may not be kind of successful right away. You may have some failures along the way, but you just got to like kind of pick yourself up and try again. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that is great advice, but let me see if we can get it down to sort of like a recipe, and let's just do a hypothetical. Would you be open
Sure.
to doing a hypothetical with me?
Yeah.
So let's say you're like, on and off, you've been mentoring me, and I'm sort of like, scaling up in my job and everything. And then I come to you and I say, goodness, I've just had this worst situation at work, and I think I've like completely like failed in this situation as a manager, and I think I'm going to lose my job. And without getting like sort of into details of it, like I come to you, and how could you help me in that moment as a mentor?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first thing I would do is I would just, if you had the time and you had you're okay with it without being upset, I would just ask you kind of the details and to get kind of context of what happened.
Yeah.
Then the second thing that I would do would I'd be like, hey, like, have you actually checked in with the people that you think are really upset at you, and make sure that there's like this perception gap. Like you're beating yourself up, like you're being really hard on yourself, but maybe the situation isn't as bad as it is from a different kind of vantage point.
Okay.
Let's say it was that bad. Like you went back to the situation and you're like, yeah, you really did kind of screw this up. Hopefully it wasn't a career limiting move, but let's say you did. Then I would say, Deepa, like you kind of have to own the mistake that you made. And now what you have to do is you kind of have to go back and you have to say, this is on me. I'm accountable. I wasn't at my best self. Here's what I'm going to do to remedy the situation. You're going to have a proposed kind of action plan with the different stakeholders that you have, and say, hey, for all the time that we've been successful together and that mutual trust that we've built, like I don't want this one moment of this one time to shatter that. So let's try to see how I can work with you to kind of build up that trust. So I think kind of breaking it down into small bite-sized chunks to have an action plan makes it seem like less daunting than the whole world's going to fall apart and you could never kind of go back. So you got to do like tiny, small incremental steps. And then if those go successful, then you kind of use that momentum. Okay, so like I'm a big fan of like, how everybody has their to-do list and it grows. Like I do the opposite. Like, of course, I write down all the things that I've accomplished. It's amazing how good you will feel if you write down like the things you've accomplished. You're like, oh shit, I did all that, rather than feeling like you flip that mindset, right? Of like, instead of like all the bad stuff that you did or didn't do, like trying to flip it around a bit.
If I understand like the steps of what one would do is that first, like I'll come to you and I'm like, oh my God, like it's the end of the world. I'm like done, whatever. So you'll just like, empathize, actively listen, calm me down. And then you'll kind of do a perception gap, reality testing. And then I'll be like, oh, wait a minute. I think I'm catastrophizing this whole situation. Let me go back and talk to the people or my manager to see really what happened. And then I come back and say, oh yeah, I just like really something major happened. But what if you and I are having a conversation, and this comes up to me a lot of times in coaching, and I don't know if you see this in your own leadership world, is that people tend to get a little bit defensive, like, and say, I didn't do everything wrong. There's these couple of things that I did right. And, this person is not talking about that. Now everybody's focusing on me doing wrong. So then I end up going myself unexpectedly into this whole I'm like sort of the victim mode or a self-pity mode. And how can we get somebody out of that to like really see it for what it is? Or at least validate their experience, sure, but still.
Yeah, I think, I always tell people that, perception is reality, whether it may not be your reality or you may not believe it. And it's hard to hear, right? If somebody says something about you that you're like, there's no way that's true. It's shocking. Yeah. It's their truth. So I have to tell people I have told people can be hard to hear because that's happened to me. I know in that situation, I'm like, there's no way this can be true. Like if you ask 10 other people, they would violently disagree with you. But guess what? For that one person, that's their reality. That's their truth. So you have to just, even if you don't agree with it, you have to acknowledge that it's their truth. Then you have to figure out, like, you have to get to the bottom of why they think it's that way and what you can do to influence. You may not be able to, change their perception, but at least if you acknowledge it, and then you try to do something about it, that will matter a lot of the time. So,
that's actually a great point because
I don't want to call it tough love or whatnot, but you kind of have to just have that direct kind of, like not beat around the bush.
And I think it's actually, it's a really good point because even acknowledging what this person is saying, which is really hard for you to hear and you may not entirely agree with it, but to say, okay, this is your perception of what you think is happening. Let's just kind of break it down. Because I think that when you're not so actively dysregulated by the whole process, then you're able to see it more clearly from that person's perspective, I suppose. And that'll then allow us to sort of like really get curious and engage and find out, let me like see what's really going on here.
That's right.
That was great. And those were like some really amazing steps that somebody could actually take and be like, you know what, these are some of the things that even if I don't have a mentor, like these are like 5 things that I can sort of look and see when I find myself in this situation. So thank you for that. I also like what you did about your to-do list and flipping it and doing your instead of to-do list, accomplishment list. And I see it more as a gratitude practice, at the end of every day.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like that, that book that a lot of people read, right? Atomic Habits, right? And they get a lot into that, right? It's kind of, celebrate those little, milestones or easy wins. It's like, maybe you didn't clean that dang house, but you folded, you did 1 load of laundry and you took out the dishwasher. You got this plan. Are you going to spend 8 hours, buff out your house? It didn't happen, but you did 2 things. So rather than like lamenting about the fact you didn't clean your house, be happy that you did those 2 things.
Yeah, no, and I think gratitude practice is so amazing. And every time when I tell a client to sort of try it, because I don't ever tell anybody that they must do it. I say, listen, these are the 5 things, just pick and see what resonates for you. And when they do that gratitude practice, and they may not realize it right away, but if they did it for like 21 days or even like 14 days, they go to bed every night thinking, oh my God, I thought I didn't do much in this day. I thought I had a shitty day and so many things went wrong. But wow, these are the 4 things that I'm really grateful for.
Yeah, and it makes you feel good.
Changes.
Yeah. The best thing about doing that practice is it's kind of like that virtuous flywheel, because when you're panicking of all the things you didn't do, it puts you in this, like you almost kind of like freeze. You get in this panic mode. Then you kind of throw your up in hands. You just don't do anything. Maybe you'll just, get on your phone and go into a half an hour Instagram thing. If you see the things you did, like, holy shit, like I just did all this, it makes you feel good. It makes you want to do more. So it kind of puts you back on that virtuous flywheel, I think.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
I mean, even though you're teasing me about how I didn't get a lot done today on this Friday, I'm feeling darn good after this. I'm really like, I just got this hour and a half podcasting though with you. I'm feeling great.
And you're giving really good stuff for our viewers. So that is great. I had to tease you. But you did have a good time with your friend and you caught up your best friend, you said. So that was good too. So.
No, my best friend, but a good friend.
Well, there you go. Your good friend. All right. So like thinking about the decisions that you made early in your career, what advice would you give young professionals or entrepreneurs that are interested in financial planning or like maybe want to be a CFO like you in the future?
Yeah, well, one of them I would say is what we talked about earlier today is, seeking mentors or sponsors or champions. I really think that's a critical thing for young people to do. And I think a lot of young people, look, things can happen opportunistically in life, and it's wonderful if they do. In fact, most of the things that happened in my life were opportunistic versus sought out. But I think, seeking a mentor or sponsored champion, I would absolutely encourage, people to do that. And I think that's a thing. I would also say kind of embrace challenges and non-linear paths. So what I mean by that is I've seen a lot of young people frustrated. They're like, I'm not moving up as fast as I want. And they just, they want that next promotion or they want that next. So I'll be like, well, why don't you try, like, if you feel like you maxed out, do something that's like a horizontal movement versus like a upward movement. Try something that's totally different. I would encourage, or like you may get asked to do something that on the surface seems like not that exciting or very unsexy, and you're in this really great role. I think sometimes if you take these challenges that don't appear to be great or embrace like a non-linear type things, those things can have positive repercussions down the road. It's hard to see it kind of when you're in the moment, but I think that's a good thing. And I also tell people to take calculated risks. That doesn't mean like be completely reckless or just be crazy with your career, but definitely take calculated risks. Don't sit on the sidelines. So those would be kind of 3 things that I would offer up.
Yeah, and I think you make a really, actually those 3 are great, but the one that you said about staying where you're at and looking at parallel positions as opposed to looking at moving up, and also just being open to doing things that doesn't seem exciting or you're not interested in doing, because like you said, you never know how it'll frame up in the future. So it almost feels like just open to possibilities as opposed to just being stuck and saying, I want this thing.
You always take what I say and you frame it so much better. I love it.
Excellent. I'm glad I do that. But I have a couple of just almost tail end of it, 2 questions. Looking back at your journey, and you've had an amazing journey. I really want to acknowledge that. And you've worked really hard for it. And you've had the temperament to like make the changes. You've taken feedback. You've had great mentors. You've come a really long way. But if you could just look back and sit down with your younger self, what piece of advice would you give that 17-year-old Suresh before going to Berkeley?
Yeah, I would say the first piece of advice I would give myself is compete against yourself, not others. Be like the best you can do. And I really got caught up when I was younger, like tracking how I was doing with, people from college, different from people walks of life. Am I more or less successful than them? And that I feel like was unhealthy. And you just want to do the best you can on your own absolute basis. So I definitely would give myself that advice. And I wish I lived or thought that way much younger than I did. I think the second thing I would say would be more empathetic.
Of yourself or of
everybody in life. I think I had a lack of emotional intelligence, EQ, whatever you want to call it. I don't think I was a great person to other people when they were having their struggles. I'd be like, well, like tough it up. Like rather than being empathetic, listen, it's like kind of shrug my shoulders and be like, okay, whatever, like move on. Like I was not very empathetic when I was, younger. So I see my son, the empathy that he has. It's like, wow, like why couldn't I be like that when I was his age? And I think the final thing I would say, it's totally okay not to have everything kind of planned out. It's okay. You don't have to like have this master plan of who you want to be or what you want to do. I think that I thought I did at that point in time. And I think there was just a lot of pressure. I think, again, being the first generation, the first person in my family that arrived in this country, where I had a lot of eyes on me. I was a lot of younger cousins who, 30, 40 cousins, everybody's looking at me. So I feel like, I have to have this incredible plan. So I wish I just would have relaxed more and said like, yeah, it's okay if you don't have to have everything. So those would be the 3 things.
Wow. I really hope the youngsters in our generation, especially the South Asian kids, can listen to this and actually really internalize it in their lives, because you know how much pressure they put on themselves and
Absolutely.
Of course parents and society and structure puts, right? If they could just be like, just compete with yourself, which is huge, be more empathetic to you, to everyone around you. And, just really don't, it's okay to not have a plan of a 10-year plan. Just be open to outcome and not attached to it. That's amazing. And one of the things also that you did, I think, was instead of focusing on your career path And compared to your peers, you ended up focusing on how your children saw you or what they wanted from you. I think that was another big shift that you did at a very pivotal moment that kind of changed, your quality of life and your family's life.
Absolutely. And, honestly, it's kind of embarrassing to say it, but all my friends around me, they're like, wow, like you're just so much more present. You're really engaged with me. And I think before they kind of saw me as somebody who would, politely listen, but my mind might have been somewhere else because I was always work. So like everybody around me just viewed me in a different way. My friendships grew, kind of deeper. My relationship with different family members, just had a lot more time, to be present and to help people with kind of different things behind the scenes. So yeah, it changed my relationships with so many people in a really positive, meaningful way.
Yeah, and I don't even know who this person you're talking about is. When I met you, you had made this transformation.
Yeah, I had.
Always actively listening, empathetic, and you're kind of funny on and off, so that helped too. As you look at your future, what's HP's foundations what are you most excited about the impact areas at the foundation level?
Oh, definitely environment and climate change. That's the reason why I joined. I am a true believer that this is the most existential, crisis of the time. Quite frankly, there's many things that the world needs to solve, but if you don't have a world, you won't even have a chance to solve those problems.
Yeah.
I think solving and you can't mitigate climate change entirely. So now you have to focus on adaptation and conservation. But I would say that that's the area that I'm really excited and get jazzed about coming and knowing what we do. We've been a deep funder in that space. We're known as historically one of the biggest funders. A lot of wealthy billionaires. It's wonderful to have them come into this space. Bezos is coming in with his Earth Energy Fund. Lorraine Powell Jobs, Steve Jobs, wife, they established the Hewlett Foundation, which is going to spend $3 billion over the next 10 years in this space. So, now there's there's billions and in fact, you invest over $1 trillion to get to the Paris Accord, where you want to have 2 degrees Celsius from warming from in the modern historical temperatures. That's an area that I could speak passionately about, for days.
Oh my God. I'm just finding this about your passion. Of course you've been passionate about your work, but this one, I could feel like we could spend another hour talking about this part of your work.
Oh yeah. I geek out by reading everything from direct air capture to carbon capture storage to all sorts of really interesting things that are happening. Even when you look at hydrogen, there's brown hydrogen and there's green hydrogen. How do you produce so I read all these technical things about sustainability broadly, but I've kind of turned into my whole family drives me crazy because they throw one food scrap that's on the compost. I'll dig out the garbage and take it out. And
this is a side of you that I don't know.
I'm a composting freak. I'm recyclable stuff whenever I see
You're a composting vigilante.
I am. And recycling and a recycling vigilante too.
Vigilante. Okay, you have to come back on the podcast again so we can spend another hour talking about this. I would really love for us to do that if you have the time, of course. One last question. What advice do you have for a nonprofit that is just grassroots in this space?
That's in the environment, climate change space?
Sure.
Or nonprofit space broadly?
Well, I would love environment and climate change, but any nonprofit is fine too.
Gosh, what advice? Don't give up. Fight. Don't give up. If you believe in, your cause, and I even bought in that, don't give up. It's worth the fight.
Don't give up. All right. On that note, Suresh, what is your recipe for life for 2024? Personal, professional?
Well, I just turned 55. So, for me, definitely don't have regrets. Carpe diem, right? I wouldn't have said that in my 20s, but I'm definitely living my life in a way right now. Not, don't have regrets.
I'm much younger than you, so I'll start with that. No, just kidding. And we have this really amazing book which Corey gave it to me 3 weeks ago, and it's been life-changing, and it very much resonates with your whole recipe for life, which is, don't have regrets. It's called 4,000 Weeks. If you haven't read it,
Ooh,
you must
I'm
get
writing
it.
Down. 4,000 weeks?
You must get 4,000 Weeks. You must get it, and you have to text me and tell me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I will add it to my list. I love reading. I just finished The Covenant of Water, which was
I know, it's
wow.
on my list.
So good.
Yeah, I heard it's a pretty long but heavy but really good book.
It is. It is.
All right. Okay. Well, it's on my list too. Suresh, thank you so much for being on our podcast. You've given us such incredible information and knowledge and expertise and storytelling. I've had so much fun just chatting with you. Hey, this is Deepa again. I hope you really enjoyed my show today. Thank you so much for listening to our conversation. If you'd love to get in touch with me or my guest, or would like the show notes, resources, or links, please reach out to me on my website. I would also love your feedback. Until next time.